All right, this is Pastor Nathan sitting here with Pastor Blake, and we want to talk a little bit about mentoring today. Have you ever had a mentor? Have you been a mentor? What are the benefits of mentoring? Why is having a mentor not just somebody who's an accountability partner, somebody who's a peer, but a true mentor, somebody who's walked the road already, is a few miles further than you, and not just that, but somebody who also has wisdom, learned from their mistakes, and someone you trust the advice and counsel they will give. So let me ask you, Blake, do you have or have you ever had a mentor in any form of life, whether sports, school, religion, marriage?
Yeah, Nathan, that's a great question. When I reflect back on my life and the different seasons that I've walked through with sports and church and school, it's difficult to say that I can identify having a true mentor, if I'm being honest. I have walked with somebody throughout life since the age of 14. I guess I'll look back my freshman year in high school when I entered school. Nervous, didn't know where to go. Didn't know what to do, and I actually had a friend. He was a sophomore, and I was trying out for the baseball team. He was already on the varsity squad, and he actually took me under his wing, per se. And we've been friends ever since. We're friends to this day. We talk about every 2 weeks, and we talk about a lot of different things. But I don't know if I've ever identified him as an actual mentor, but for the last 30 years, that's what we've been doing with each other. I can honestly say that we've been mentoring each other throughout life.
Like, what's the last conversation you had with this guy that isn't a conversation you'd have with just an acquaintance or somebody that's more of a casual friendship or even a decent friend or a coworker? What's the kind of things you guys have worked through?
Yeah, great question. We talk about a lot of deep subjects. Probably the last conversation that we had was his sister OD'd, and so for the last 2 years we've been having a lot of conversations about death and family and relationships and family, and how to deal with certain relationships, from parents to in-laws to kids, and we bounce ideas off of each other, and it's been a wonderful thing, so yeah, I'd say that's probably the last conversation that we had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, the first real mentor, my father was a great mentor growing up, wise man, and so we had a close relationship. But true mentor outside of family would be a youth pastor that I had in high school, Roger. And Roger took me and a couple of my buddies under his wing and really helped us. I mean, we ended up volunteering after high school as junior high leaders. We interned over the summer with him, did summer camps, and I'd say my first real love and look into ministry came because of Roger willing to go the extra mile, not just be a youth pastor there to teach us on Wednesday nights or Sunday morning, but really answer questions and teach us beyond just seeing us as young kids, or we were a little bit troublemakers as well in high school, but he saw the potential in us. And so he was probably the first real mentor. I could ask questions of him. I could ask questions maybe you don't ask your dad or you're embarrassed to ask dad, and had a real relationship where I trusted what he said. And then he gave me opportunities where other people weren't going to give an 18-year-old, 17-year-old kid opportunities. And so that gave me really the passion that I have today for ministry, and seeing him and how much fun he had in ministry. It drove me to be where I'm at, even though I may have gone and spent 7 years in business and thinking I wanted that. The ministry bug was planted because of the mentorship of Roger in my life.
Did you know at the time that you were being mentored?
Yeah. He sat us down probably my end of senior year, and said, hey guys, like, you guys have a ton of potential. I know you have a lot of energy, because we always distracted, like to make people laugh. And but he said, I'd like to mentor you and teach you guys and show you some of the things of Scripture and do more in-depth Bible studies with you. And that led to that. So it must have been junior year, because then that led to that summer interning going into senior year. And then we ended up senior year helping with junior high and ultimately working with high school after we got out. So yeah, it was an intentional mentorship. He'd have us over to his house and hang out and get to see what he was like outside of just church. And it made him more of a real person, you know. For anybody young out here, or anybody who ever had a youth pastor just seems like this, you know, he wears dad pants and white Keds and plays silly games on Wednesday night.
That looks really cool.
Yeah, but he's super cool though with those dad pants. It's sad. I just bought a pair of those, man, at Kohl's.
You should return them.
They're stretchy.
No, you should return those.
It has a size.
You're not a youth pastor.
It has a size, but they're stretchy, man.
Okay.
And
right.
I felt so good in them. I danced.
I'll come take a look at them.
Anyway, yeah, and so you got to hang out with him and see his life and see how he acted with his wife and his kids. And I don't know, there's something to that. There's something to, and I had a stable family life and all of that, but there's something to seeing that person who's investing in your growth in his everyday life at home. Is he the same person there? What do his kids think of him? How does he interact with his kids? How do he and his wife talk when they're not at church and they're on, you know? And he invited us into that part of his life. And man, that was immeasurable as far as growth and understanding what ministry would look like, that it's a real job, that there's real pressures and stresses and things that are outside when people see a pastor on a Sunday or a Wednesday. Yeah.
So as a lead pastor, like how do you find that mentorship now? Being a lead pastor, and you're over a flock, looking and overseeing the people in the flock and other pastors and staff. Who can you look up to? Who's above you that you can grab onto as a mentor?
Yeah. So Mark Buckley, the pastor that was my senior pastor from Living Streams that I came from, he's remained on. And that's something we talked about when we left. I asked if he would mentor me and continue. And so he reaches out to me quarterly. We talk. For my first few years out here, I was meeting with a group of older senior pastors who'd been in it for decades. And so I was meeting with them. I meet with currently about once every 6 weeks or so with about 5 local pastors from around the valley here who are all senior pastors. And that's really where my mentorship comes from now. I still keep in touch with Mark. I still keep in touch with those more mature senior pastors. And then I've got the group of local pastors, guys my age and guys older than me, and it's some younger than me that are right in the thick of it. And so those are the groups that I surround myself with as far as mentorship goes. And I mean, I've got an accountability group that's peers my age and guys not all in ministry, but in the business world. And that's, you know, an accountability group of brothers, iron sharpening iron. But when it comes to mentorship, when it comes to bringing a problem from ministry, or how do you deal with this, those are the groups I go to, those groups of pastors, and that's been invaluable. I don't know how a pastor does it without a group. And I know a lot of pastors who don't have groups like that, because there's so many things that hit you on a weekly basis that you aren't prepared for, that no one could prepare you for. And you're wondering, how do I deal with this? How do I go forward? What's this going to do to the church? What's it going to do to relationships? And so usually amongst that group of, 10 guys I just mentioned, 1 or 2 of them will have gone through it already. And so they give great advice.
Yeah, it's real danger in doing it alone. Question for you, but real quick, it's interesting when I'm talking about my buddy, and, you know, it like that's a friendship. You know, I think just we've kind of mentored each other just kind of on the side, just kind of a natural, organic thing over the 30 years that we've known each other. So it's in the true mentorship, it's like, how do you find that right mentor for you? Like on the top of my head right now, it's like, yeah, that I've got that accountability group. We're in that group together. Mm-hmm. And it's a wonderful group. But, you know, 2 things I look at, it's like, okay, I need to find that mentor who is traveled that road before me, you know, in men's ministry and marriage ministry, and been down that road. And gone through the hard times and the challenging times. And I also kind of have this desire is I want to find that guy who's raised boys. I've got 3 boys, right?
Yeah.
Haven't raised any daughters, so I'm the wrong person to talk to when it comes to raising girls. I have no idea, but I've got 3 boys, and it's like, man, they're entering high school, or 2 of them are already in high school, and it's like, man, facing real issues.
Yep.
It's like I need to find that guy, who's been down that road. But I don't know. It seems like it can be difficult to really find that true mentor that you pair up with.
Yeah. So I'll give some advice, and hopefully this helps people, because this advice goes beyond just ministry. But what I originally looked for when I was looking for a mentor, and again, this was advice that came from Roger, right? So as a 17-year-old kid, and he's telling us you need to constantly have mentors in your life. Do you have people who are ahead of you that are feeding back into your life? So that was something I learned from him. And so when his season of being a mentor was over with and we were growing up and moving on, and he ended up moving on, I was looking for another mentor at the time. And so what you're looking for is you're looking for somebody who has walked a similar road as you. So like you said, finding a man who has raised boys and not just walked the road, but loves the Lord, did it, endured hardship with his sons, has endured rebellion, has overcome it, and now has a solid relationship with his kids. Like, you're looking for those things in guys that you know. And then once you have identified 3 or 4 main things that you want in a mentor, you got to just be bold and ask. Like, yeah. And this is what I've found as I get older now, and I'm in a position where I've mentored people younger than me and coming up in ministry, is when I get asked by them, hey, would you mentor me? There's a difference there between just counseling somebody, because that person is getting ready to walk the path you've walked. Every time you spend with them, they're eating it up and they're soaking it in, because they're about to go live it as soon as they leave you. It's not theory. It's not, you really should try to do this. It's like real meat to go after. So you got to be bold and ask those people. And honestly, I think most of them, unless there's something extenuating, they'll say yes. It's an honor to be asked. And then when they see somebody else who's striving and doing well, who's humble enough to say, hey, I'd like advice in this area, then there's an honor to being asked. And so anybody listening, you got to identify that person. No one can really identify that person for you. Your wife can't. You need to be looking around and thinking, who do I know, right? And maybe I don't know him yet, so God, would you bring him across my path? And once you do, I need the courage to go and ask him and say, hey, I don't want a ton of your time, but could we meet once every 6 to 8 weeks and sit down for an hour and talk? And I've got some questions that I'll ask each time, and then if you have questions for me, please do that. But if you're not bold and ask, mentors won't always just come to you like Roger did as a 17-year-old kid to me. Like, they're not going to come and seek you out and say, I want to be your mentor. You need to go and seek them out. You need to go ask. So. And
it sounds like you need to identify the relationship too.
Oh yeah.
Like, you're not building a friendship or starting a group or hanging out. You identify the relationship as a mentorship, and so the roles are established, and that would probably create a healthy
boundaries, and both of you know what you're getting out of the relationship. You both understand it. Yeah, that's really important up front as well.
So you being, the lead pastor here at LifePoint, I'm over our men's ministry. Like, how do you sustain a mentor relationship? Because often in the beginning, it sounds great. Both are excited. And then when you get in the car and you travel down that road, life happens. Families, activities, whatever. And it starts to slip a little. And you meet less and less. You just get busy. And so often we've seen mentor relationships sort of fade out, like a New Year's resolution. Mm-hmm. How do you combat that? Like, how do you sustain that? Do you recommend like following a curriculum, more organic?
So I've never followed curriculum. I think that can work for some people and different personalities. But honestly, a mentorship is like a marriage. You just got to work at it. At the beginning, it's exciting. Both of you are enjoying it. You're both learning a lot. And I can say I really, when I came out here 8 years ago, started up the local pastors group. and it was exciting, and none of these pastors were meeting from the churches, and so I was really pushing it. And then since then, I sort of backed off from pushing it. The church here was growing, and my plate got so much fuller. And then one of the other pastors really began to push it and take the agenda and make sure we were meeting. And it's like a marriage, and you've got to fight for the relationship, because you will come to a point when you say, I don't really need it anymore. I think I've learned all I can from this person. And that might be true, but more so than not, you just don't feel like going and being vulnerable anymore, or you don't feel like going and having to admit that you just had a really big breakdown. And now I got to tell this person that they've just seen me grow. And now I got to say, hey, I just slid back. Right. And so honestly, humility becomes a big part of whether you're a mentor or you're being mentored. I need to make the call. And so you put it in your calendar. Maybe as the relationship goes on, you're not meeting as much. Like me and Mark, we meet maybe 3 to 4 times a year now. Usually it's over golf. Sometimes it's a dinner. But whenever we meet, as much as we may talk about sports or ministry for a little bit, we always end up back to, how are you personally doing? How are your kids? How is raising them? What's this going on? And so, and he drives that, right? So when we meet, he's really driving that conversation with me and getting it out of me, some of the things that I'm not just freely expressing or wanting to talk about. And you got to work at it. Just like a marriage, you got to work at the relationship, because like all things, it's beneficial and it's good that you have a long relationship in mentoring, but it takes work when you get past the initial excitement of it, for sure.
No, that's good. I 100% agree. I mean, curriculum can be valuable and can work for some people, and you can train the mentor, and the mentor can be ready to help the mentee. But one of my favorite things that I went through was Common Man, Uncommon Life. It's a series on Right Now Media, and it's about Navy SEALs who are Christians. And Jeff Bramstead said it perfectly. He said, if you're a new Navy SEAL and you're about to go on your first mission, he's like, you can look at all the books and the manuals and the bullet points on what to do. He's like, but what you really want to do is you want to go talk to the guy that's been on 3 missions and come back, and he's got scars and bruises and nicks and dings in his armor, and you just want to sit down and pick his brain. And so when you've got someone that's new to the faith and they want to go down that path and on that journey, the first thing I want to do is I want to find that guy who's been walking in the faith for 5 years or 10 years and say, who can remember how they started and those early years and what's going to happen. And it's like, just sit down and pick his brain, rather than necessarily jump into this curriculum or this book or sign up to serve in every capacity in the church, where you just end up burning yourself out. It's just sit down, talk to that guy, and start that walk, right?
That's exactly right. And that's, again, it's all humility. As God picked the disciples, as he called them out to come and follow me, they still had to respond, right? Jesus went and found them, or they were brought to him in some cases, but he made the call, and then they had to respond to it. They had to humble themselves and say, I need to follow somebody. I need somebody in my life. And for most of us men in American culture, that is seen as a weakness, to say, well, just go do it. Just go pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And that's a lie. And one of the things I'm excited about with this actually is, as we begin February here, we're going to have a discipleship plan coming up. And I know I talked with you pastors recently about this, but it's a 4-week plan where we're training and preparing the mentors to go through it, and then they're going to be ready, and we're going to have men and women on both sides as mentors, and then be able to sign up and be assigned someone to help you learn what it means to be a disciple.
Yeah,
right.
Good.
One of the first things to mentoring is, what does it mean to be a disciple? It's what Jesus called us to. It was those last words, go be disciples. But what does it practically mean? And for so many of us, what I love about this simple 4-week thing that was shown to me, that I've read, gone through it, and now we're going to be teaching it to our pastors, staff, and whoever wants to be in that position to be a mentor, was your own recognition of, how is my relationship with Christ? What are my thoughts on the Holy Spirit? how do I talk to somebody who is hostile to the Lord? How do I respond to somebody, a neighbor who is hostile to the idea of church, or is a different religious Mormon and thinks we're all the same? How do I respond? Am I confident enough in my walk with God? Am I walking in ways that allow me to be able to respond with the same grace Jesus would? And so that discipleship class is going to be coming up in February. You could be looking for that, but that might be a first step for a lot of people listening. Hey, I don't know where to find a mentor, but at LifePoint, they got that sign-up sheet out there. Come sign it. We'll assign a mentor 4 weeks. And between you and that mentor, you can determine between yourselves whether that's something you continue on in a relationship, or maybe now you're saying, you know what, this has helped me identify someone in my life who I think would be a really good mentor. But there's no excuse not to, I think, is the best thing here. And even as you and I have been talking, sort of walking away from this saying, I need to make it a point in my life that I'm sitting down with somebody and it doesn't have to be somebody in the family ministries, but somebody who's walked through that. And I need to go fight for that. Just like you fight for your marriage and date nights and everything else, I need to fight for that. Because every time I leave, like I just met with Mark, I don't know, a couple months ago. And every time I leave that relationship and that time together, I walk away filled up. Even if it's not, nothing profound was spoken, there's something about having that mentor who is purposefully pouring into you. They're asking you questions and they're interested about you, and they aren't there to share about themselves, right? Like, I'll ask questions back and he answers them about his family, but his concern is me and what's going on, and dig in a way that isn't intrusive, but is sort of welcomed, because you realize I could actually share anything with this guy right now. And I know what I'm going to get is an unbiased, loving response back. So,
yeah, I think during this time of fasting, definitely something to be in prayer and reflecting on as we move forward into February, taking that next step, in discipleship and mentoring, and so it should be exciting.
Sounds good. Thanks for sitting and talking with me, Blake.
You bet, Nathan. Enjoyed it.
All right. Coming up next on KBBQY, we have Story Hour with Linda Brooks and Sean Bailey. We'll see you there.
Sponsored by Behringer Tools.
Nope.
Behringer
we don't
Tools.
have a sponsorship from Behringer.
When you need a hammer, look to Behringer Tools.
That's not what Behringer does. I wish Joe would just have music playing out as we're talking like that. Nope, that's not what Behringer does.